When Michael B. Jordan stepped onto that stage and reached one of the biggest moments of his career, most people were focused on the win. But behind the scenes, something else was happening that had nothing to do with awards. Because right around that same moment, reports started circulating that Harvey tried to reach out to him and got absolutely nothing back. No response, no acknowledgement, just silence. And that silence? It said more than anything he could have posted, said, or explained. Because this isn't just a story about a breakup, it's about a complete shift in power, and the kind of moment that makes people look back and question everything. At the height of that win, people started realizing something uncomfortable. Lori and Marjorie Harvey weren't just watching from the outside, they were once part of his inner world. They had access to the version of him no one else saw. The quiet moments, the effort, the intention, the way he showed up consistently behind closed doors. That version of Michael wasn't public. It wasn't for headlines. It was real. And now all of that was gone. So when reports came out that Lori tried to reconnect after that moment, it hit differently. Because this wasn't random. This was after everything had already played out. And the fact that nothing came back, that's what made people stop and pay attention. But that moment didn't come out of nowhere. It actually started much earlier, on a night that didn't look important at first, but ended up changing everything. When the breakup first went public, it wasn't handled quietly. It dropped while Michael was sitting courtside at a basketball game. Cameras caught him in real time, reacting to something deeply personal while the entire internet watched. That moment spread instantly, and it didn't take long before it turned into something else entirely. Memes, jokes, edits. His reaction became content, and the internet didn't hold back. He went from being in a serious relationship to becoming the center of jokes almost overnight. People laughed, people speculated, people built entire narratives off a single expression caught on camera. And while all of that was happening, he didn't say a word. No response, no clarification, nothing. At the time, it looked like he lost control of the situation. But looking back now, that silence hits very differently. Because what happened next wasn't just random noise, it felt structured. After the breakup, the story around him started to shift. Suddenly, people were hearing things that painted him in a completely different light. That he wasn't as genuine as he seemed. That he might not have been fully present. That something about him didn't fully add up. And those ideas didn't just appear out of nowhere, they were repeated in interviews. Reinforced through subtle comments. Supported by outside voices stepping in and adding their own perspective. Even Lisa Ray McCoy appeared in conversations hinting that he may have still been emotionally tied to the past. It all started to feel coordinated, like pieces being placed one by one. At the same time, Lori was building a very clear image for herself. She spoke about protecting her peace, knowing her worth, walking away from anything that didn't serve her. And then came that post everyone noticed, the license plate that read, "Dump him." That wasn't subtle, that was a statement. It framed the entire situation in one direction. Like she made the decision. Like she was in control. Like she walked away from something that no longer met her standards. And for a while, people believed it. But there was one person who never fully aligned with that version of the story. Steve Harvey. While everything else was shifting, Steve was saying something completely different. He spoke about Michael in a way that didn't match the narrative at all. He talked about how intentional he was, how he listened, how he would go out of his way just to do something small that mattered to Lori, driving an hour just because she mentioned wanting to visit a farmer's market, thoughtful gifts, real effort with her family, even buying Marjorie skis. That's not surface-level behavior, that's someone investing seriously. Steve didn't just describe him as a good partner, he described him like someone who saw a future. And he didn't switch up after the breakup either. No shade, no subtle posts, no joining in on the narrative being pushed. He stayed consistent, called him a good man, said he was rooting for him, and even after everything, that respect never disappeared. That became even more obvious during that moment people couldn't ignore. When Steve and Michael crossed paths again at a basketball game, they didn't avoid each other. They didn't act distant, they shook hands, they hugged, and the respect was clear. But not everyone was happy about that, because Steve had already explained the rule in their household. If someone becomes Lori's ex, they become his ex too. No interaction, no acknowledgement, nothing. And yet, he broke that rule. That alone said everything. Because if he truly believed the narrative being pushed, that moment wouldn't have happened. But it did. And it exposed something deeper. That not everyone involved saw the situation the same way. While all of this was happening, Michael stayed exactly where he had been the entire time. Silent. No interviews defending himself. No public back and forth. No attempts to correct the story. The only time he even lightly acknowledged anything was on Saturday Night Live. And even then, it was subtle. Controlled. Just enough for people to understand without turning it into drama. He didn't fight for the narrative, he stepped away from it. And instead he focused on something else entirely. Building. Working. Developing projects. Moving forward without reacting to every comment, every rumor, every assumption being made about him. While everything around him was loud, he stayed quiet. And then came the moment that changed how everything before it was seen. That Oscar. Because that wasn't just an award, it was validation on a level no narrative could compete with. Everything people questioned about him suddenly didn't hold the same weight anymore. The man who was once being doubted, joked about, and redefined publicly was now standing at the highest level of his career. And right after that, reports say Marjorie encouraged Lori to reach out. Think about that shift. The same situation that once needed him to be seen in a certain way, now had people reconsidering his value completely. But that call didn't lead anywhere. No response, no conversation, nothing. And that's where the dynamic flipped completely, because power in situations like this usually comes down to one thing: who needs the other person less? And right now, Michael doesn't need anything from that situation anymore. There are even rumors that he may have blocked her number. And whether that's true or not, the idea alone carries weight. Because ignoring a call can mean anything. Being busy, not interested, not ready. But blocking, that's a decision. That's closing a door completely. And when you look back at everything that happened, the timing, the narrative shift, the public perception, that decision starts to make sense. At the same time, Lori's image after the breakup was built around one core idea. That she was the prize. That she chose herself. That she walked away from something that didn't meet her standards. And in general, that mindset works. It resonates. It empowers. But there's one condition people don't talk about. It only works if the person you walk away from stays where you left them. Because if they grow, level up, and reach a point that changes how everyone sees them, then the entire narrative starts to feel different. And that's exactly what's happening now, because the comparison is unavoidable. On one side, you have someone who just reached the peak of his career and isn't responding at all. And on the other side, the relationships that followed. And the internet has been very clear about how it sees that contrast. But this isn't really about regret. It's about perspective. Because while everything was being said about him, while narratives were being shaped and opinions were being formed, he wasn't reacting to any of it. He was building. Quietly. Consistently. Without needing to prove anything in the moment. And now the result is speaking for him in a way nothing else could. Steve Harvey might be the only one who saw that from the beginning. The only one who stayed consistent in how he viewed him, even when everything else was shifting. And now that consistency stands out more than ever. Because at the end of the day, this situation isn't about who was right or wrong in the relationship. It's about what happens when someone you walked away from becomes exactly who they said they were going to be. When the person you once had access to becomes someone the world now recognizes at the highest level. And when that happens, no statement, no post, no explanation can compete with the one thing Michael B. Jordan chose from the very beginning: silence. So now the real question is this: do you think Steve Harvey was the only one who truly saw who Michael was from the start? And do you think Lori will ever speak on what really happened now that everything has played out? Because this story didn't just end, it evolved. And something tells me it's not completely over yet.